name is Karen Sue Graybill. I'm an alcoholic and I'm a drug addict. I've never done an alcoholic lead in my home before, but we're going to try it out today and hope for the best and hope that my video camera works right. So, Alcoholics Anonymous is a worldwide fellowship of more than 100,000 alcoholic men and women who have banded together to solve their common problems and help fellow sufferers in recovery from that age-old baffling malady, alcoholism. 12 traditions. We hold on into unity and effectiveness. Alcoholics Anonymous began in 1935 in Akron, Ohio, as the outcome of the meeting of a well-known surgeon and a New York broker, both of severe cases of alcoholism, and were destined to become co-founders of Alcoholic AA Fellowship. The basic principles of AA as they are known today were borrowed mainly from the fields of religion and medicine. A lot of failures and getting other alcoholics to recover. But there were 3 successful groups that emerged. First in Akron, the second in New York, and the third in Cleveland. Even then, it was hard to find 2 score of sure recovery in all 3 groups. Nevertheless, the Emphasis Society determined to set down experience in a book to finally reach the public in April of 1939. At that time, the recoveries were about 100. The book was called Alcoholics Anonymous, and from it, the fellowship took its name. In it, alcoholics, was described from the alcoholic's point of view. Spiritual ideas of the society were bona fide for the first time, and the 12 steps and the application of these steps helped the alcoholic's dilemma was made clear. The virtually impossible has now become possible. Still is the basic text of the fellowship today. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men or women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. They are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands vigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what happened, what it was like, and what it is like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these, we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil. Until we let go, absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol. It's cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which is suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over ourselves, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. I'm supposed to tell you what it was like, what happened, and what it's like. So, when I was a young girl from Ohio, also where Bill and Bob reside, and all of my uncles and aunts were alcoholics, and the only ones that were not were my parents, and they drank occasionally though. We'd always be at my grandma's, and they'd always be drinking, and we'd always be playing outside or doing little kid dirt stuff. We didn't have phones and stuff like that back then. So I just remember when I was at like a New Year's Eve party at my aunt's house. I remember my parents, it was New Year's Eve, and they were getting drunk downstairs. So me and my cousin, we decided we was going to go upstairs. So we went upstairs, and my cousin, her brother was older. So that's where we got drunk while my parents got drunk downstairs, and they didn't know. And I remember trying to go down these steps. My mom come to get us and make us go to bed. It was like 2 apartments in this house. And I remember thinking, oh my God, if I fall down these steps, she's going to know I'm drunk. And somehow I made it downstairs and went to bed. And she just never knew. And I remember at one point, I was probably around 15 years old, I think I was, in school, high school. It was about the same time as that happened. I was in high school, I was about 15. And I remember our school, we was allowed to leave at lunchtime for like an hour or so it was back then. And so we had this pool hall down the street. So we would go down there and get pop and play pool for our lunchtime and get, something to eat if we wanted it. Well, at the time, the boyfriend I had, he had, I guess, some vodka by this house, and we outside, and we picked it up and we took it down to this pool hall. It was called Buddy's back then. And what we did was we poured the vodka in our pop can so that the place, Buddy's, the pool hall, didn't know that's what we were doing. And that's how we got drunk. Well, unbeknownst to me, on the way back to school, I just remember falling flat on my face in the road. And my friends, instead of, helping me, they helped me get back to school so they didn't get in trouble. And I got suspended for that. I remember it. And I got in trouble for smoking cigarettes on the bus before, too. And so that's why I decided to walk every single day to school so I could smoke cigarettes. And I've been smoking cigarettes since I was 13 now. And I'm 41. I was born in Dover, Ohio. I have 3 sisters, 2 older half sisters, and a younger sister. No brothers. And to this day, I'm thinking, this has got to be because this is why I took the manly trait, because nobody else would for my dad and stuff. So anyways, guess who had to be the one to do the things nobody else would do then? And I'm still doing that today. Well, and then at an early age, I remember being like 19 was my first DUI, driving under the influence. And I remember just being scared to death, like, of jail and what they were going to do, but fearless at the same time. I remember it. I'm like, well, they're going to do what they're going to do. And then, I always try to cover up the marijuana use I did. I know with Alcoholics Anonymous, they don't like to bring in drugs. I can't help it. I tell them that if it's disrespectful, I apologize, but there's no way to untake it out of my stories. It's impossible. Because it's all correlated with each other, I feel. So, where was I at? Oh, my first DUI, and I had failed for marijuana, and bam. And I remember my probation officer was saying, to be honest, and I wasn't. That's how I learned to be honest, was because, well, she told me to be honest, that I would get further, so I did. I told her the truth, and I still got in trouble. I still had to go to jail for 90 days that time. I was pissed. But I still remember right before that, some kind of falsification, trying to stick up for somebody, or trying to be somebody else, or I don't know what I was trying to do. Get out of trouble. Save my ass, but it just never really happened. Well, sorry, I said ass. It's not something they would normally do at a meeting, at lead either. Not likely. So after that happened, I did my 90 days in jail. I ended up getting out and doing the exact same thing, drinking again on the weekends, partying. That's just what everybody around me was doing. I mean, I couldn't even go down the street without somebody drinking or smoking weed in the town I came from. I knew not one sober person but my parents. It was kind of, looking back, it's kind of depressing. But then, after that happened, my mom decided she was taking custody. I had a daughter with a boyfriend at the time who was an alcoholic, drug addict too. And so we had a daughter. I was 19 years old. I remember um, I went to somehow I graduated from my mother at 18. And then 2 weeks later, after graduation from high school, I had my first daughter. I was 18 years old. and then I had the DUI. That's how that went. So basically, my mother was taking care of my child. She decided that she was going to get custody before the state took her and things like that. And I agreed. And I paid child support, tried to keep jobs. At one point, I was like clearing it out. This free spirit. I just went wherever I could fit in and get help and tried to help back. That's just what I've always done, and kind of like a chameleon. Well, I remember I had saved up money for this birthday party. I was clear about an hour away from where my mother and child lived. I was basically homeless. Homeless. I remember seeing the horses, and we ate eggs. You would think I would be sick of eggs, but I'm not. But I remember getting all these birthday presents. My daughter was 2 years old at this time, and I was going to go see her. I had a warrant for my arrest at the same time. So instead of, my parents basically told me that I was going to see my daughter for her birthday. And I got arrested instead. Or they was going to try to arrest me. They didn't catch me that time. I just left the presents and ran. Scared to death. And I've been on my own, I feel, since 14 because I just never listened. I don't know why I never listened. I just didn't. It's like something in me just does the opposite for some reason. And it's always been that way. Kind of like I want to know why you say no. And so I stay there and take the hardest route possible to find out why you said no. And that's the worst way possible to do things. Well, after this happened, so I didn't get arrested, but I think it was probably few months later I got arrested for the warrant that I had. And I probably did about 4 months that time too. Every time I go, it's about 4 months. I know no bond or nothing like that. Well, it started out, I was the alcoholic, and that's why I say drugs were in my story because I started out alcoholic for the first 20 years of my life before the drugs was kind of like dibble dabble type thing. And I just didn't understand why you were so mad about marijuana when God put it on the planet. And I've been saying this since I was 20 years old. Same thing, 41. And unbeknownst to me, that this community was money hungry. But that's a whole nother story. So, what it was like. And then I just remember being alone all the time. I didn't really have true friends. They were all alcoholics or drugs. So we just kind of learned. I kind of learned that, you just was there for a good time and then you go home. Well, the problem was there was no home to go to. If I went to my parents' house, it would just be an argument. And if I went to somebody else's house, it was trouble. So, I mean, you kind of learn the trouble that you're around when you have nowhere else to go. You're thinking when you're a young person, you're thinking, oh, well, I can just go here and it'll save the trouble with my parents. I won't get in trouble. You don't know any better to the effect that what you're around you become. Duh. Well, and then on top of that, if you actually have a heart and have empathy, you do care about other people. And you don't want them to be alone and suffer alone. And that's not a healthy place to be either. So at this time, we got a couple DUIs going on. And it was just like every time I would get a job, something else would happen. Well, I met the second baby's dad. I was about 22 at the time. I couldn't understand I didn't know what validation was at the time either, but I just know that it was like really, he made me feel good in a week. That would have been like a red flag now, looking back, that I was loved in a week. And then a week later, things changed. That's when the abuse started. And it got real bad, real pretty bad. And I remember him pinching me in bars, like when somebody would look at me. And at the same time, the alcohol helped numb that abuse. So I just didn't know that my body was becoming dependent on the alcohol while I was being abused either. I mean, I had the example. I just didn't want that example. I feel like I was sheltered too far. Well, and then like the rest of everybody else wasn't being sober like my parents. So it didn't make no sense to me how a whole community was drunk and on drugs and partying all the time, and my own family, and then my parents, mom and dad, are not. It just seemed backwards. Seemed right what I was doing their way, the bad way, than it was to do what my parents was doing. So this abuse started, and it occurred, and I covered it up just like any other typical girl would do. Didn't want them to be in trouble, afraid you're going to be in trouble, because your abuser actually trains you that you're going to get hurt more by turning them in, or you're going to get beat more, or they threaten your family and children, and just it's a sick, twisted place to be in. And I remember calling the cops, and I remember him taking me and just slamming me into concrete. And my dad, he didn't know what the hell to do, but there are pictures, and he really was abusive, and he did get in trouble for that. And I remember one time I was drunk driving. He lived about 45 minutes from my parents, so it was called Old 36. So I would take that way to go back and forth to my parents' house. Well, unbeknownst to me, the psychopath, I just had our daughter. He busted the windows out in my van. So I'm half drunk because that's how I deal with things at home. Didn't know how else to deal with abuse. I'm not saying it's okay, but I mean, it's thus far to this day, it's still the only drug that covers up pain that you can get on the street that doesn't cost you $1,000,000 to do. So, anyways, I remember calling 911 because the fucker was behind me. I was scared to death. I'll never forget it. And there was like flames shooting off the tire rim of my van because he popped the fucking tires. So I'm like, I'm just gonna keep going. I blow up. I blow up. If I stay, I'm gonna die. I mean, he's kind of a hyper vigilant moment, really, flying down 36, and I'm like, I'm calling 911 because if I don't, he's gonna kill me. I mean, what were my options? Get killed or kill somebody. So I just called the police. So that's what I was taught to do. And they come, and I did get a DUI for that. But they also said, we would prefer to, it's not that you don't get in trouble for a DUI when you're scared to death for your life. I mean, there's still consequences, basically. And I would joke and say, it's okay to drive drunk if somebody's trying to kill you. It's not funny. It's really not funny. But it's the truth. There's still consequences, and I paid for them for that too. And that was the beginning of the psychotic problems I've had since. And that's what makes my alcoholic story different. Is one, many people don't want to speak about the abuse. Two, it was more abusive than people want to realize or saw or know about. And three, it's usually kept under the rug hidden, and I won't do that. Because it says vigorous honesty, and that's what I've been doing since. I remember going to my first alcoholic meeting in AA. I was about 19, 20 years old. I even remember the attorney at the time. I seen him the other day at court, who drove me to the rehab. So I went to rehab 3 or 4 times, as many times as it takes is how I feel. But so I finally get away from this psychopath after I remember watching Intervention in the house, getting beat by this dude. That's my baby's dad. And then you got the parents trying to cover it up like it's no big deal and stuff. And it was. Well, I got out of there and I got my own little place, an apartment up here and closer to home, instead of being out there with those crazies and abusers. And I remember getting this little apartment, and things were going pretty good. I was on medications. And I, at one point, got diagnosed with the post-traumatic stress disorder. and it was in the rehabilitation center, and it was from the trauma I endured and spoke about. And I just knew that if I wanted to help and to get better and to heal, that's what I was going to have to do. So I did it. I've always gave 110%, whether anybody believed it or not, in my recovery. I may not have on the way there, and that's why they force you to go because you just don't want to. You don't know how sick you are, really. Well, so now at this time, I'm still young, about 25, 26 years old, 3 DUIs already with 2 children. One's with my mom, and I'm trying to keep this one safe, feeling guilty about the first one. So I'm trying to do everything I can to keep her safe from this person. And unbeknownst to me, something's weird, funny is going on with my child. So now you got her all not wanting to go to her dad's house at all. So I'm petrified. I don't know what to do. I know what kind of people these are. I lived it, survived it, and I couldn't get rid of them. So I ended up getting a protective order for my child. She was about 2 years old. We shared a child, and they gave it to me. And everything was all good when I bought attorneys and paid money. And once I started doing it myself, apparently they didn't want to believe me anymore. So I did that for about 13 years. I was her attorney. There was actually one of the ladies I got a beef with would go into Alcoholics Anonymous too. And she was an attorney at the time. I hated that woman with a passion because she was against me and don't even know me for money. And that's what they do. That's their job. I didn't know it then. Don't know. They're the most, I'm not saying her, but all the other attorneys, they're the most money hungry humans I've ever met in my entire life. And at some point, you're thinking you're doing everything you can for your kids, but you can't get away from your abuser because they want to keep sending you back and they think it's minute telling them the same story 5 times on recordings. And in my mind, let it go. You know, we'll just pray to God and maybe, they'll heal and change. I don't know what else to do at this point. I mean, you can only tell the story 5 million times too many, and nothing's being done. So when you're stuck around abusers, what happened behind my back, these people, I ended up getting both my parents and the father's parents lie detectors test done. Because I don't discriminate. I don't know which one it is. My daughter's 2 and can't speak. I mean, what the hell would you do? Well, I was fair. I've always been fair. And the people I worked with then were too. And this was what, 10, 15 years ago now? Well, well, anywho, doesn't matter. I know my story is going to be a lot different now because of what I had more trauma on top of everything. I remember when I bought my trailer, I ended up going to jail again for probably marijuana, dirty urine. But when I got out, I got a school loan. I'm like, I'm going to do it this time. I was mommy and daddy, so there never really was a daddy there, and neither one of my kids left. They'll just tell you they were, and they weren't too. And the one I didn't want there, I ended up try to get a DNA test done and pray to God that he wasn't the father, but he was. So there was no way away from this abuser, period. Well, then, I got this trailer with my school loans. I paid about a couple $1,000, and I love this thing. And that's where me and my child, I would co-parent with these narcissists, and I was a pretty good mom, other than being poor. I had to work full time, try to go to school, and raise my kids by myself. One was at my mom's, and then I had her, and then I just got the older one back, and unbeknownst to me, I was becoming abusive. So who's to say it was alcohol, the drugs, or the abuse I endured? Probably all three. But I won't lie to you. I was becoming abusive as I drank. I'd get off work. I would drink a beer while I'm making dinner and doing homework. And probably a couple hours later, I was getting violent. And I know I was. I was mean to my kids. The older one, it was like I wasn't fair. I can see that now. And when I did do my couple leads, I did bring up about how I was abusive to my own kids because I'm not not going to lie to you. I have no reason to. I know how human we are and how many times we can make mistakes. I just don't hide it like everybody else do. So my daughter, the oldest one, ended up going back to my mom's house, and then they made me leave my trailer because when I was at church trying to get volunteer help with money to pay these stupid bills, I ended up getting kicked out. There was somebody that was staying at my house, and at the time, like I said, I didn't know the people that you were around how dangerous they were. I just thought I was helping. I was like, God asked me to do, so I did. Well, anyhow, when I was at church, that person was threatening the water bill guy who was coming to shut my water off, I guess. And I ended up having to move and leave. And those are the pictures I had today. They ended up tearing down, bulldozing my trailer. That's what they did. That didn't help me. I left all my stuff there. I remember being at the lake getting drunk because I didn't know what else to do anymore. No friends, nowhere to go. Nobody cared, and that's just the way it was. The only time I ever felt like I belonged anywhere was in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the only time. And even then, I watched gossip and people treat people all horribly. And so that's why I did my own process of elimination by myself. But let's get back to what happened. We're not done. I mean, it's deep. And I got it as simplified as possible, really. Probably never know the whole story unless you know me. Because I talk so much. Anyway, so 13 years is going on. I lose my trailer. So what happened after that? Oh, I'm sure I got in trouble and went to jail because I don't even recall getting another place until I got my apartment recently, about 3 years ago. Got my apartment. I was in rehab. I just got out of rehab, got my apartment, and I was in drug court because this time I met a man. I allowed some of the abuse because in my mind is he didn't attack me like that. He made one mistake, which break my nose, but he didn't. When I called the police in my trailer, I got arrested. So it was never the right person getting arrested. I got arrested for trying to get help multiple times. That's just the way it was. I don't know what's wrong with these freaking police department. I don't even want to know no more. They really believe these people and they hated me for some reason. I know now that looking back that the baby's father and grandmother were saying lies constantly behind my back for years. And then the new boyfriend was too. I didn't know this though. When I dated this guy, after I got arrested in the trailer, that was before I lost my trailer. So I'm sure I got arrested. So that was another DUI. I remember at one point I tried to kill myself. Even I took a bunch of pills, laid down by a tree, and I woke up 2 days later, and it was like I was tripping on acid for about a week. So now you can understand why I don't like drugs because I know the actual effects of them. Even when you take them when you're supposed to, the way you're supposed to, or not the way you're supposed to. And I remember I just desperately wanted somebody to care. They just didn't. And at the time, my kids were my life. So I remember when I had the trailer before I lost it too, I had parenting classes. And I loved it because she would come to the house. So it forced me in a way to be sober. Not to mention what I was learning and applying in Alcoholics Anonymous. I really wanted recovery more than anything in the world. It was the only thing I ever did focus on. The only thing I did pay attention to and listen and learn about. Maybe it's because it wasn't my parents or their unsuggestive ways or their approach and things is more understanding than how a parent's strict ass rules are. I immediately rebel when somebody demands things now. Immediately can't stand it. Still. And I know that stems from abuse, control, and stuff like that. So now that's a lot of years of alcoholism. I don't. It really was blurry at one time because I couldn't remember because I stayed drunk more than I was sober. Even to this day, this is probably the most sober I've ever been my whole life. I'm 41, last 3 years, and that's dibble dabbling in other drugs and things too. I'm not gonna lie. So then here comes the drug scene. because I got tired of being arrested for marijuana use every time. So let's just do drugs that are out of your system in a couple days so we can pass these tests now. So that's where that began until the fentanyl scene came in. And then I'm like, oh crap, don't do heroin because you're definitely getting fentanyl. So that's when meth came in. And then while I was doing methamphetamines, it was like at the beginning it was too much and I used needles. I'm not gonna lie. I used a needle the first time I did meth. And so yes, I was tweaking it and high for real. And you never get that dragon, just like the alcohol, you never get that actual happy drunk again. You just don't. And well, what I'm trying to say is, um, then it started working like it was supposed to. Like everybody else is tweaking around me, and I'm not. I'm guess either getting immune to it, or my brain is chemically changing from being hyper vigilant 24/7. So when you're around chaos so much, you just kind of get used to it. You don't like it, and you're 20 steps ahead at times. And then the last 3 years, I was in human trafficking because I was trying to be, helpful, trying to understand and trying to help myself and get help at the same time. And nobody would help me. They were hateful, disturbing, thieves. They wanted to take everything I had. It was petrifying. And that's why. And then it was at the same time COVID happened. So, so now they're making me leave my apartment. I'm with another abuser. I just get my daughter back, trying to help her because of their abusive family. They're teaching her don't speak, don't talk, don't anything that would help yourself. After the years I've learned that it's better to get help and talk. They're teaching her the opposite. That's what a narcissist does. That's why you don't want to co-parent with them if you don't have to. And that's why the systems need to believe you and they don't. Well, the problem I had was um, I just lost my sister of cancer. And then they take my child. And then they tell me I have to move out. All in 2 months' time. Right when COVID hit. Top of it. And then I'm with somebody who's an abuser. And I called the cops. This is the fourth time he stole my car. I called the cops. They didn't do anything. And then I borrowed the ex-boyfriend's car. And this dude steals it too. It was either give him the car or get in the trunk. And I didn't know if I was going to be alive to get back out of that trunk of that car. So I abandoned the fucking car and I walked down the street about 5 miles. And the next morning I get home and the cops just appear out of nowhere, thin air. I didn't have a cell phone either because it was stolen. So I get to the police department. This dude, he's mean at times too. And he's like, you're fucking going in there to tell him about this car being stolen. So I did. That dude got 3 days for stealing my car 5 times and putting me and my child in danger and the cops doing nothing. So yeah, now we got a problem with cops. They won't help women and children. They keep arresting me when I'm being abused and they won't listen. And I keep telling them the truth and they don't care. So we got bigger problems. And then during the human trafficking, they kept putting on me what all these people were doing. And so I know I had a legal tracker on my car and they heard some of it. And that's when things started to change because I just started doing process of elimination to get these people away from me. And that's how I did it. And that's how I learned that being around these kind of people is not healthy for you. And a lot of times you don't even know you're in an abusive relationship because you have psychopaths everywhere who are abusing women everywhere, then you just think it's a normal functioning. It's not. It's not okay to be like that and do that. And that's when I decided I'm going to teach that women are supposed to take men to their soul, and men are supposed to protect women. And it just built from there. Then I have my sponsor 2 years ago try to tell me don't speak, don't use this. You're not supposed to. The 12 tradition states don't share content, to make money. I don't. It's supposed to be a donation kind of thing. I don't get no donations. I actually pay into the music industry to get help. And I actually am in debt $500 with Facebook right now to save my life was a lot cheaper than the $50,000 school loans I have for the cops to not help me. So what it's like now, I had to learn things. I didn't have a phone for over a year and a half. So I learned time from the sun and the compass in my car. And I didn't really eat that much. I just wanted a box of food by the river and couldn't even have that with a food card. So it was kind of depressing, really. I was at the lowest I could possibly go, the bottom of the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. And nobody would help me under the sun whatsoever. They wanted to blame drugs when in fact I was just getting robbed from, and that's why I was um, isolated from everybody. So they could keep doing that stuff. And it worked. About 2 years. And I cried, and I was getting unemployment. It took me a year to get my unemployment after COVID and lose my apartment and calling and trying to get to a phone to report it. So I had some income when it was here. Well, it took about a year to get that money. And by then I was still screwed because I was living in my car. And to get a shower, I only went to the hotel room a couple times. And in that couple times, there were people that would follow me. I didn't know they were following me to steal my money so hard. They knew I was gullible, but they didn't know. I was not the type to use names. I'm still not the type to use names. When my younger self, those gangsters and drug addicts taught you don't use names for exposure. Now, Alcoholics Anonymous teaches you don't use names for, exposure for the same reason. So now I'm stuck in the middle between a hard rock and a hard stone. Half afraid I'm going to get murdered. And I did see being poisoned before it happened. I did call the cops and I said, if something happens to me, you know why. I meant it 100%. And I was poisoned 4 times. And the reason I say it relates to alcoholism is because it's the same sickness. It's not the alcohol or the drug. It's you. You're the sickness. You're the problem. You need help. That's just a symptom, a band-aid to cover up the problem. And that's why I say it should be, if that's your story, that's your story. And then, so not only do I have alcoholism in my story, I have drugs in my story, and nothing but abuse. So I'm going to speak about it. And another thing I wanted to tell you guys too, and what it's like now is, now I get marijuana is my medication. So it's a little ironic that I had to go to jail multiple times. But my purpose was to go to suffer and to make change in the world. So that's what I'm doing. Whether it's working or not, I see some. Whether it doesn't, I still see some. So in other words, don't hide your abuse. Don't hide your alcoholism. And don't be afraid to help yourself and love yourself. And every time that I thought that I was loving myself, I wasn't. You can't love yourself if you put yourself behind to make sure somebody else has what they need. If your cups are not full, you cannot fill up another cup. And that's just reality. Also, what it's like now is I won't go outside. I have connections and a couple friends that are in the music industry, and no one else. I speak to my oldest daughter, the youngest one they took her illegally too, so we don't speak until she's 18. That's fine. But I've been writing a story on Messenger to her, so when she gets home, she can look at it. For about a year and a half, I wrote to her. So I was taught that in parenting class. You can't see your kids, write to them. Just because they did what they did and it was illegal and shouldn't have done that, then you did everything you can. That proves how much you love your child. And I made mistakes too. I'm not going to lie. I was doing the drugs that they wanted me to admit to. But when we was in that courthouse and he tested dirty and I didn't, I knew that they were going to do me dirty regardless of admitting to it or not, because they were and did. They didn't follow their own laws. I was baffled, completely baffled still to see the cops be letting the cartel in while I'm doing a sobriety test. Yeah, that's a little absurd. And, I'm not the best and I'm not the worst, but I sure in hell ain't no criminal, and I'm not going to allow somebody to put me in them shoes ever again. I'm the type of person that, okay, I pulled over the side of the road drunk, but I prefer to do that than to drive drunk. It just makes no sense. I was made to make money. So now you got psychopaths that will just drive home and they kill somebody to protect themselves because we're not allowed to pull over the side of the road and keep anybody safe, ourselves or no one else. It just does not make sense to me. I'm just different in that way. What it's like now, I have a full-time job on top of teaching about narcissism and abuse and love. Because if I don't know no love from humans, there's not much out there. And so that was part of my purpose to do. What else is it like now? I'm not where I want to be, but I sure in hell ain't where I was. That's a fact. I never thought in a million years. I feel to this day, if I would have been left alone a little bit more to be myself and not demanded and controlled so much, I probably would have just quit years ago. But because they want to control me, I'm just going to be like, I show you I can hurt me better type thing. And it's not the way to go. I don't know how I'm still alive. I was poisoned by fentanyl 4 times. And in the end story is this: the police. I had a vision because I had visions, and I thought the love of my life at the time was going to be murdered. They wanted him dead. Somebody wanted him dead. It was after I seen the cops. I pulled over and I was hysterical. It was about 3 years ago now. And so I pull around the road a little straighter than I was from being hysterical, and this cop comes anyways, of course. And I told him there was drugs in the car. There wasn't, but there was. What if they got hurt with fentanyl? And that's what separates me from everybody else, is because they would let the cop die just like the cops would let me die on the side of the road over a freaking dollar. So it's not per se just the police here. This is happening around the world, on the planet at large, at a normal rate. And I can see that versus other people cannot. So whenever I was in that human trafficking, I did like a fasting, it's called. I just didn't have anything because couldn't have my own things anyways. It was being stolen. So I just went without everything. That was my fasting. And I just decided I'm going to take off all the conditions of the world because they tried to put me in boxes and it broke my freaking legs off. I didn't appreciate it. And then for you to be just as criminal and human as me made me kind of sick. Who the heck are you telling me, and you can't even walk a line ever? It just made no sense to see the systems do what they did to me and not even realize that they chose the bad side like they did or cared. They just didn't want to expose at that point. They're just doing everything they can to cover it up, and there ain't no covering it up. They got exposed anyways. And it was for a purpose, to make change, and that's how God works. And that's what I always did, was follow God. And that's, I'm always going to follow God. God's in your heart and your soul. It's your birthright. It stays in here. It doesn't go anywhere unless you choose the demons, which is alcoholism and drugs. Unless you choose to be abusive, which is ignorant. Unless you choose to hurt children and choose to keep going that way. Like I told my roommate, and then we'll wrap this up. I'm sure there's lots of things I missed. But it hurts a lot more from the universe than it does to change yourself willingly. And I've tried to do it willingly, but it's still worse if you don't. And I just want better for humanity and myself. And there's celebrities that don't even know what Alcoholics Anonymous is or was. They're not going to just show up on the street. So for you traditional, by the book, one way thou art ways, that's just how I have to do it so they understand. Because they don't have an alcoholic lead to go to. And now they have one. So, and I will get to see my child one day. And I will get to see my oldest child one day. And I will be happy and free. Because I don't need the marijuana either. It was for principal purposes. Because they said I couldn't. Just like they said I couldn't do everything else in my life that I did. So I basically made the impossible possible. And I was a walking miracle. And I've seen a couple walking miracles. I was a sponsor before. It was a younger woman I had, an older woman. The older woman, she's passed away now. And that's from complications, and it's not from alcohol and drugs. It's more like asthma and breathing. And then the younger one that I sponsored at one time, she's currently in jail. So, I mean, I don't know everything, but I know enough. I don't want to hurt anymore. The pain was greater than the change. Straight up. I ain't gonna sugarcoat it. The pain was greater than the change, and it forced me to. And it wasn't alcoholic pain; it was abuse pain. It had nothing to do with alcoholism at all. But this is my vision for you. Prayer. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.